Throughout this season, I've repeatedly told you how things still catch me off guard, how I can still fall into the old conditioning, but how the speed at which I recognise it has increased exponentially. And I've done all that intentionally because all those episodes were leading to this one. This final episode is about how being human is, well, human, and you don't have to be perfect to be healthy. Next season, I'll be answering your questions about any subject I normally cover. If you'd like to submit your question, please use the link that's in the show notes or just go to the podcast page on my website. Because here's the thing I want to leave you with, and it's the thing that this whole season has been circling. You've spent 12 weeks with me pulling apart everything that got installed to cope with abusive environments. And if you're anything like the brains I work with, live with, own, there's a part of you that may well have been keeping a scorecard, learning about the fawn response and marking yourself down every time you apologise for existing, learning what a boundary is, and then deciding you had failed the first time saying no made your chest go tight. I want to catch that right now before you close the season and file it under things I'm bad at. I know you've been asking yourself, am I the problem? Let's find out with me, your host, Helen Villas. Think back over where we've been, because I'm not going to teach you anything new today. I'm just going to hand it all back to you in one piece. We started with not knowing what you feel, standing in the ready meals aisle, unable to answer a simple question about dinner because nobody ever treated your inner world as information worth keeping. Then, whether you're overreacting, that horrible loop where the feeling arrives at full volume and a lifetime of being told you're too much makes you distrust the reading before you've even understood it. We talked about apologising for existing, the sorry that leaves your mouth before you've done anything, because at some point being small was the thing that absolutely kept you safe. Not knowing your own preferences, because a preference is a small act of self-assertion, and you learned early that asserting yourself had a cost. Saying no and what it does to your body, trust all or nothing, everyone or no one, because a rule is easier than a risk when the people who were meant to be safe weren't. The body itself and how you can be the last to know you're hungry or frightened or completely done. Finishing things and the shame your ADHD got welded to by someone who used it against you. Parenting in opposition, exhausting yourself, doing the reverse of everything that was done to you, and your relationships following the same pattern, the green flags reading as red, the kindness that lands as a threat. Now, if I laid all of that out and asked you to grade yourself, I'm pretty sure I know exactly what a lot of you would do. And if this doesn't fit, then fine. But just make sure you're not defending something. You'd look at the list and see everything that you still do. You'd noticed you apologised twice this morning and that you froze on a no last week, and you'd conclude quietly that you've listened to 12 episodes and you're still broken. Let me flip it for you. Imagine your child came home having learned to swim. Not perfectly. They can get across the pool now. They still swallow half of it, and their technique is... it's kind to say a disgrace, maybe. Would you stand at the edge and tell them, well, you're still not Olympic standard, really, so what was the point? Of course you wouldn't. You'd be delighted because they can do a thing this year that they couldn't do last year. So why is the standard you'd never dream of applying to the child the exact one you apply to yourself? That's the conditioning, and I want to name it properly, because a challenge without the explanation is just an accusation. You weren't born measuring yourself against perfect. Somebody taught you that your worth was conditional on performance, that good enough was a synonym for lazy, that the only acceptable state was flawless, and anything else less was evidence against you. That isn't a personality trait you chose. It's a survival strategy you developed, you were handed, and it worked because in that house, perfect was safer, or at least striving for it. It's just that you're not in that house anymore, and the strategy's not still running, rather, long after the danger's gone. And perfect never worked anyway, did it? Here's what healthy actually looks like, and it's going to be less impressive than you were hoping. Healthy is not the absence of an old pattern. I've had the training, the therapy, the degree, the masters, the everything, the years of this being my actual job, and it still catches me out, especially when I'm tired or my cognitive load is high or I'm feeling vulnerable because things have been going on. The difference between me now and me 15 years ago isn't that the old wiring is gone, it's the speed, it's the new data. It used to take me weeks to notice I'd slipped into people-pleasing, then days, and now, on a good day, I catch it mid-sentence. In fact, on a really good day, I notice it pass through my brain and go again. That's the whole game, not never falling in, but getting faster and kinder about climbing out. Both of those words matter, faster and kinder, because you can absolutely learn to spot the pattern quickly and then use the spotting as a fresh stick to beat yourself with. Oh, look, doing it again. What is wrong with me? That's not progress. That's the same conditioning, wearing recovery as a costume. Two things can be true. You can hold yourself accountable for a pattern and refuse to shame yourself for having it. Accountability is, I notice I did that and I'd like to do it differently. Shame is, I did that because I'm fundamentally wrong, broken, awful, evil, all the things. One helps you change, the other just hurts and maybe even keeps you stuck. And it's the thing you were taught to do, so it'll always feel like the honest option. It isn't, it's just the familiar one. Now, I'm going to pull you up on one thing before I let you go. You believe all of this. You believe people are allowed to be works in progress, that healthy doesn't mean perfect, that recovery isn't linear. You believe it completely for everyone except you. You'll extend it to your friend, your sister, a stranger who writes to me, and then quietly exempt yourself. And you'll call that having high standards. It isn't high standards. It's the old rule still running. The one that said everyone else gets to be human and your job is to be flawless, so nobody has a reason to leave. And if that stung, notice the sting for a second. Not because you've done something wrong. You haven't. Of course you haven't. But because that flinch is the conditioning showing you exactly where it still lives. You're allowed to be a work in progress. Not one day when you've earned it. Now in the mess, mid-slip, only halfway across the pool. That isn't the consolation prize for not being fixed. That is what being a healthy human being actually is. So, that is the season. Thank you for spending it with me. It's been an absolute privilege to have you in the passenger seat while I pull this apart. Next season is yours. I will be answering your questions, whatever you're stuck on, whatever normally comes up in here. So send them in using the link in the show notes, and let's start season 3 with the thing you actually need to know. Thank you for listening. And as ever, all that remains to be said is take care.